The slogan that the Department of Education uses, "Leave no child behind," is the right slogan. And that needs to be our united mission from all over the political spectrum and all over the country. Leave no child behind. And one of the people that helps do that in our metropolitan area here, somebody who's been active in school reform, is our next speaker, Leah Vukamir. And I'm very pleased to introduce her because she's a real advocate for expanding parental options when it comes to educating our kids here in Wisconsin. She's a founder and past president of a nonprofit parents group, Parents Raising Educational Standards in Schools. Please join me in welcoming her, and especially give her a warm welcome and a big hand because she was the 1998 recipient of the Center for Education Reform's Unsung Hero Award, and she also happens to be a candidate for the state legislature in Wisconsin. So give her a big hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Secretary Hickok, Representative Williams, Dean Kern, and assembled guests. Welcome to Milwaukee. The heart of education reform is right here in Milwaukee, and we are really proud of our education reform efforts and truly honored to welcome you to this incredible gathering of parents, teachers, school administrators, and business leaders and community leaders, all coming together to celebrate the 10th anniversary of charter schools on the national stage. Over the next few days, close to 3,000 people will gather in this conference center to share ideas, to network, and to look ahead to the next decade of charter schools. To me, that's truly amazing. Could any of us have ever expected this or imagined 10 years ago that the charter movement would grow to this magnitude? I don't think so. And yet here we are, ready to roll up our sleeves in preparation for the next decade of change. I was asked to talk today about the role of parents in the charter school movement. In order to do so, I need to tell you how I became involved personally in education reform. You know, if anyone had told me 10 years ago that I would be addressing this impressive audience, I would have said they were absolutely crazy. 10 years ago, I was busily caring for my young family and getting ready to send my young daughter, Elena, off to kindergarten. Well, little did I know that my life was about to dramatically change. And it did so because I questioned a reading practice being used in my daughter's classroom. And I asked the system for an alternative, another option, another choice. Well, at the time, it seemed like a pretty simple request. But back then, things were different, and I soon found out otherwise as I encountered firsthand what Dr. Bennett refers to as the blob. Well, suddenly this mild-mannered mom turned into a mom with a cause. That simple request turned into a mission, and that mission led me to other parents in Wisconsin, and we founded our parent organization dedicated to raising educational standards and raising parental awareness in the school reform process. Our mission was to empower parents and to encourage them to advocate for research-based choices and options in their children's schools. That organization grew into a state and national network of parents with children in public schools, private schools, home schools, and yes, I am proud to say that several of our parents were involved in the formation of charter schools here in Wisconsin. They may even be here. Kelly Cryenkamp of the Verona Core Knowledge School and Kendra Lindsay of the Classical Charter in Appleton. One small event opened my eyes and propelled me into the school reform movement. Each and every one of you in this room probably can recall one single event that sparked your interest in this movement as well. One episode in your life and click, suddenly, you're an education reformer. We may not have been concerned about the same issues. Each of us may have had a different idea as to what we really wanted for our kids, and that's okay. Each of us has made a commitment to making our concerns and turning them into a reality. And that reality is changing our nation's educational landscape. Today, that landscape includes, as you know, charter schools, choice schools, alternative sponsor schools, and yes, even virtual charter schools, such as Dr. Bennett's K-12, which is making an inroad here in Wisconsin and some of your states across the country. 10 years, and look what we have accomplished. As we look at the success stories around this room and around the country, I put together a formula. And since we're all into schools, mathematical formulas, I think you'll all appreciate this. Here's my formula for success. Parents plus vision plus passion equals educational choices plus competition and reform. I'll just repeat it one more time. Parents plus vision plus passion equals educational choices and competition and reform. We've been very fortunate here in Milwaukee, as the mayor outlined. We have seen this formula work in my parent group Press, in our choice program, in the Black Alliance for Educational Options, 2 programs spearheaded by Dr. Fuller, and through the great work of Cindy Zautke of the Wisconsin Charter School Resource Center and the Wisconsin Charter School Association. We have all supported each other's efforts, even if we were approaching education reform in a different way. Why? Because we knew that we had a winning formula. Parents plus vision plus passion equals educational choices plus competition and reform. There's a synergy in our combined efforts, as together and separately we stood up to the status quo. Our opposition did not fear our ideas would fail, but rather that they would succeed. And that has created change, unprecedented change. So I encourage you all to look for those same alliances when you go home to your own communities. You are each unique, and you each play enormous roles in this winning effort. Not everyone sees the problems or the need for change. You do, and you have taken the time out of your busy lives to be here. Why? Because you have a vision, and that vision includes dedicated teachers, principals, administrators, business and community leaders. That creates choice, and that leads to reform. I know it sounds simple when you put it together in that little formula, but we all know the hard reality is that it's very difficult, and it requires an enormous amount of strength and commitment. There will be times when we are called names. There will be times when we are tired. There will be hard days. There will be all kinds of obstacles, administrations, and yes, even other parents, which brings us back to why we are here today. For the next few days, you will be exchanging ideas and addressing shared concerns. You will create an incredible energy in your interactions. Take that energy and bottle it up. Save it for those hard days. Stay involved. Empower others to get involved. Take one day at a time, content knowing that you are making a difference one person at a time, one school at a time, and one child at a time. If one person can truly make a difference, you have already made that difference. Continue to do so and never give up. Before I introduce Secretary Hickok, I will conclude with a quote from a fellow reformer familiar to all of you, I am sure, Chester Finn. At a recent conference here in Milwaukee, he said, "Parents are the consumers. They need to be in charge. They're the only force that will stand up to the entrenched bureaucracy." As I look out at this room, I can tell you right now that I see he is absolutely right. Parents, let's roll. Thank you. It gives me great honor to introduce one of our nation's foremost advocates in the charter schools and expanded parental options in education movement. As Secretary of Education in Pennsylvania under Governor Tom Ridge, Jean Hickok helped to launch charter schools in the state and was a champion for raising academic standards, promoting accountability, and ensuring that all Pennsylvania's children received a quality education. Now, as U.S. Undersecretary of Education, he has brought his commitment to leave no child left behind to the national stage. Please join me in welcoming Undersecretary of Education, Eugene Hickok.
Thank you, Leah, for that very kind introduction, Mr. Mayor. It is good to be back in this marvelous city. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Center of School Choice in America, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I guess I am the entrenched bureaucrat Leah just mentioned. I hope not. I want to spend a few moments with you talking about the purpose behind this gathering. And I hope start this conference off with a sense of bold imagination. We are gathered here, it seems to me, to celebrate and to contemplate. To celebrate, as has already been mentioned, a decade, 10 years of a charter school movement in this great nation. But also to contemplate how to sustain this movement, how to improve the schools, the education all of our students receive, how to build on what we've already learned through hard work, sometimes difficult experience. Most importantly, in my opinion, how to nurture this great American education revolution that you have started in this country. And I mean that sincerely. I think it is a great American education revolution. American, not just because of where it's taking place, but because in many ways, this charter school movement reflects all that this nation was founded upon and that's made it great. The values, the principles, the ideals of the charter school movement at its best are the values, the principles, and ideals of America. Innovation, creativity, risk-taking, competition, choice, performance, entrepreneurship, a can-do attitude. It seems to me at its very base, the charter school movement harkens us all back in many ways to what this country is all about. And if you think about it, what public education is supposed to be all about in America, what it once was and needs to be again. At its very base, a group of people getting together to make sure their kids get the best education they can get. What a radical concept. And that's what the charter school movement's about. Radical, if you look it up, means striking to the very root. You are helping to nurture the very spirit and fabric of America through the efforts in your schools. Revolution? Yes. Because it started with a spark 10 years ago. And that led to a flame, and that flame has led to a fire, and that fire lights the imagination of people all across America. The recognition of endless possibilities, outstanding opportunities that start one child at a time and grow and grow and grow. A fire, in my opinion, that glows with such intensity that it can't be ignored. This movement isn't just a fad. It's here to stay. You and what you do in your communities cannot be ignored. You will not allow it to be ignored. You are causing people everywhere to take note, to rethink traditional approaches to the way we educate America's kids, to learn new lessons, to ask new questions, to consider new ideas. What you are doing transcends the particular dimensions of the classes you have and the buildings where you exist. It transcends all of that. You are changing the American education culture. Your purpose is far greater than even you realize. You're helping to sustain a fire that's so bright that at its best it can light a new path for kids, for young men and women caught in the darkness of ignorance, in schools that don't work, in classrooms that don't work, with teachers who aren't teaching. The fire you light can help bring those kids out of the darkness of ignorance and create children of light, of learning, of hope. Ours is a revolution that begins with children. And because of that, it is a revolution that has the potential to change everything. Everything. Imagine the possibilities. Let me take you to a few scenes, some current and some perhaps just beyond us, that you deal with and can help create. Come with me to a city, or it could be Philadelphia, where the good senator lives. It could be almost any major city in this nation, but come with me to a city, and come with me to a fourth grade classroom. Now, it's almost the end of school in this fourth grade classroom. So you walk in, and first of all, you can't help but smile, because anytime you go to elementary school, I don't care where it is, you're going to start smiling. I tell my staff all the time, if you get depressed, get to a fourth grade or third grade classroom. Walk with me into that classroom for a second. There are the kids sitting at the desks. Notice the bright colors on the walls, the pictures and the drawings. It's springtime, so you've got flowers and birds and trees and kites. Lots of energy. Look at these kids. Look into their eyes. You see what I see, don't you? You see the hope. You see the energy. You see the excitement. These are sponges. They are so eager. There's so much potential. Now keep looking in their eyes. Let's say there are 30 kids in this classroom. As you look in their eyes, recognize that in this classroom and in far too many classrooms across this country, of these 30 kids, maybe 26 can't read at grade level. Are you still looking in their eyes? That hope, that's hollow hope. That potential will disappear. It'll disappear because they will leave this fourth grade classroom in a few days, and they will be going to fifth grade. And they'll be passed along, and as they're passed along, more and more of these bright-eyed young kids will fall by the wayside, and all that potential and all that hope will be lost. And meet the teacher, great lady. She's been a teacher for 30 years. And you can tell from the moment you meet her, she's engaged. She loves those kids. And you ask her how they're doing as the school year ends, and she'll tell you, quickly, unapologetically, I think our kids are doing great when you think about where they come from. And in a second, unknowing, she gives voice to that soft bigotry of low expectations that the president talks about. The charter school movement, the Leave No Child Behind Act, improving education is all about the future of those fourth graders, wherever they might be. So let me give you a few other scenes to consider. Imagine, if you will, a school that combines third and fourth graders in classrooms. And as you look into this classroom, you'll notice something a bit different. All the fourth graders are sitting at tables, and there's lots of color. Third and fourth graders intermingling, lots of books, lots of materials, lots of energy. No textbooks. They sit at tables with computers, and they learn how to access information and knowledge with the help of 2 or 3 different teachers and parents, because at this school, as most successful schools, parents are partners in education. As you watch these kids and their imaginations light up, you'll notice that they are talking with each other and working with each other, and we find out that they're accessing and learning in ways we now know work. And we talk to the parents, and each of the parents has a Palm device and instantaneously can find out how well their child is doing every day in school. On homework assignments, on classroom assignments, because you see, education doesn't just take place in buildings. Education and schooling are not the same thing. Education takes place 24 hours a day, if we're good at it. Now, these parents and these teachers and these kids are good at it. And now, as you look at this classroom, realize that these third and fourth graders are 2 grades ahead in reading and math. And they still play on the playground and crack jokes and make fun of one another. They're third and fourth graders. But they're learning, and we're learning with them. Come to me to another school. This is a school that used to be a supermarket in a strip mall in a big city. Now it's brightly colored, the home of a charter elementary school. Walk on in and you'll be greeted by 2, let's say, second graders in their uniforms. Good morning, Mr. So-and-so. Glad you're with us, Mrs. So-and-so. And when they shake your hand, they look you right in the eye. They're proud of themselves. They're proud of their school. There are good things taking place in this former supermarket. And every student from K through grade 5, every student, in addition to the regular academic subjects, takes music and art and learns a second language from the moment he or she enrolls in this charter school. And here as well, the parents are full partners in teaching, in development, and guidance. And in this charter school, some of the older students, by that I mean 5th graders, work with 1st graders as mentors and helpers, because nothing can shape a 1st grader more, perhaps, than an older kid taking the time to work with you. And in this charter school, every student does school chores because it's their school, it's their home, they're proud of it, they want to take care of it. It's part of their routine, it's part of their education. And in this school, they have a discipline code, and the students abide by it. And they have a school song, a school anthem. They recite the school pledge. And in this school, kids are exceeding their own and their parents' own high expectations. Come with me to another school, a middle school in a major city. Now here, where you see typically the most difficult times for young people, those middle school years, you can see them, you have seen kids as they start middle school, how many of them fall off? Because it is a difficult time to be a young person. In this day and age, where you're assaulted with the media, where everything is instant gratification, it's hard for these ages to sit and think and concentrate. But once a week, in the science class, in 6th and 7th and 8th grade, something different happens in this school. Medical school students from the University Medical School down the street and medical school faculty come to the science classes. And every student gets a white lab coat, and they bring microscopes and Petri dishes, and for the next hour they might be learning about paramecia and amoebas. They're exploring worlds that are on the textbook page, but now have come alive. And they're engaged in learning about science from scientists. And as you watch these kids, you'll realize they begin to think of different kinds of role models. Well, maybe I'd like to be a scientist or go to medical school or learn more about this. And you think the lab coat's a gimmick, but it's not a gimmick, because for that hour, that child is making pretend he can be a scientist. And for children, making pretend's the first step toward creating visions, and without visions, there's no future. Imagine going to school anytime, anywhere, all the time, everywhere. With virtual schools and cyber schools and the advances in technology, you can custom design education for every individual child. How's that for the ultimate class size initiative? You don't need bricks and mortar. You need imagination and creativity, opportunity. Imagine a high school for students who wouldn't be students if it weren't for this school. You've met them. You might have been one. Students at the edge, this close to falling through the cracks. Students who, for whatever reason, everyone's given up on, and so they've begun to give up on themselves. But at this school, educators found these kids, and now, before they fall through the cracks, these precious young men and women are beginning to find themselves. They're helping to turn themselves around, because all of a sudden there are high expectations for these kids that no one cares about. And there's discipline that helps them become self-disciplined. And the school becomes an extended family, something they've been lacking. And at this school, they learn the value not just of the extended family, but of community service and trying to build a better world in the neighborhood where you exist. And so as character is being built, a community is being built. They know, these kids. They know how close they came to being lost. You can see it in their eyes. You can hear it in their voices. They know if it wasn't for this school and this program and these people, there would be nothing. And they also know when they leave this school, when they graduate from this school, they will move forward. And as they move forward, they've kind of promised themselves they'll keep their eyes open for other kids from other places who are this close to falling through the cracks. And they'll do what they can to help them find themselves. Imagine a city that has the audacity to say, in this city, education is the people's business. It's everybody's business. We're going to throw away the notion that we somehow have one system of public education in this city. We're going to consider a broad array of options, a banquet of opportunities. And so every spring in this city they have an education week, similar to the old college fairs. And parents come from all over the city with their kids, and they get to know all the different organizations that are interested in providing education in this city. Charter schools and for-profits and nonprofits and community organizations, union-run schools, virtual schools, endless possibilities. And they get all this information. And every one of these schools has a performance contract with the city and with any parent who wishes to send their child to that school. You get the picture? And so after you as a parent select your priorities, your choices, the city sends you a ticket, a coupon, a voucher. And you then use that to purchase the education you think is best for your child. And then, of course, if you're not satisfied, you can change. Or if you choose not to participate, you can use that to homeschool. But the point is, what matters is not what the city or the district would tell you should be made available to you, but what you make available to your child. It's risky. But if we don't take risks, we will fumble, not just in education, but as a nation. And how's this? Imagine a state with no school districts, with no boundaries. Imagine a state that says, well, no, wait a minute. Schools exist to educate. Districts exist to educate. But the goal here is education, not buildings and districts and systems. So imagine a state where all that is gone, and the debate every spring when the legislature is looking at the budget, the debate is not about how much the system needs, but how much the students need. Imagine that potential. All of these images are possible. Some have already started. Some I've been lucky enough to be able to witness. Just imagine where this American education revolution can take us. New landscapes, new territories, more fertile fields. And so we gather here in Milwaukee, the middle of America, to contemplate and to celebrate. I don't want to sound too corny, but in my opinion, as we close out the first decade of this revolution, you are among the founding fathers and mothers and sisters and brothers of that revolution. And as you go forward, as you contemplate and celebrate these next couple of days, well into the summer, in anticipation of what lies ahead, I ask you to remember just three things. First, understand fully and never forget the responsibilities you have undertaken. To kids, to families, to communities, to taxpayers. Lives and futures and dreams. Lives and futures and dreams have been entrusted to you, as well as dollars. Be vigilant. Don't let up. There's too much at stake. Secondly, don't lose touch with that energy, that creativity, that sense of purpose and mission that led you to do what you do and brought you here. Now, one of the challenges we face as a movement, as we mature, we must not allow ourselves to get old. We got to keep that youthful energy and vigor and vision. We can't let the incrustations of institutionalism kill the soul and spirit that is at the very heart of this movement. Keep the vision, keep the energy, keep the purpose that got you here. And finally, most importantly, remember what's at stake. My former boss, the former governor of Pennsylvania, now the director of Homeland Security, can tell you, in his opinion, what's at stake is the Homeland Security. That's what education's importance is all about. His first major speech as director was that education's the key to our national security. You know it's the key to making sure that your communities in this nation remain competitive with other communities and around the world. Education. You know, anytime you look at the population of a prison, no matter whether it be a city jail, a county jail, or a federal pen, the fact is far too many of the folks in those buildings don't have an education. And that's one of the reasons they're there. You want to stop building prisons? Education. international security, education. Welfare reform, education. It is the single common element behind success or lack of success in America. That's what's at stake. But you know what's really at stake? Those fourth graders you first met. Those fourth graders and others just like them all over the greatest nation on earth. We owe it to them, you owe it to them. And that's why what you do is so important. If you can remember those three things, not just during your deliberations, but during the difficult days and the difficult times, then I can promise you this: there will be children we'll never know from places we may never see who will benefit from the good work you do in this American education revolution. Thank you very much. One of the pleasures I've had, both as Secretary of Education in Pennsylvania and now as Undersecretary at the federal level, is to meet people such as yourselves from a variety of walks of life, from every political spectrum, who are convinced that nothing's more important than improving America's schools. When I was in Pennsylvania as Secretary of Education, I got to know our next speaker rather well. He hails from a city I love, a city I just mentioned, Philadelphia. His father was a state senator. Now he is. His mother was a career educator, and I think she must have taught him pretty well. We first got to know each other because the governor, my job was to try to encourage the General Assembly of Pennsylvania to think differently about education with academic standards, higher standards for teachers, and a charter school movement. The politics of education reform differ in every state and every community. In Pennsylvania, it could only work if you had broad, bipartisan support. People would look at Pennsylvania and say, we have a Republican legislature, a Republican administration. You ought to be able to snap your fingers and get what you want. It doesn't work that way. It probably doesn't work that way anywhere. Education translates differently and crosses boundaries. And I met, at that time, Representative Anthony Williams. And I came to know and respect and admire a man who wasn't going to allow politics as usual to rob kids of their potential. We went to the well many times trying to get charter schools passed. You know, the way the General Assembly of Pennsylvania works, it went late at night into the very early morning. I think it was a Thursday morning, 3 o'clock. And on the floor of the General Assembly stood a Democrat, an African American from a big city, who was teaching his colleagues all across the aisles a lesson. He spoke with passion, with feeling, with experience, a sense of urgency, and no acceptance of excuses. And in no small part, he is responsible for having it pass the House and the Senate. Within a month, the first charter school in Pennsylvania was created. We are engaged in an American education revolution. It is a bipartisan revolution. It's not Republican or Democrat or black or white or Hispanic. It's American in its broadest and fullest sense. And I want to introduce you to one of the true leaders of that revolution, and a very dear friend who I admire a great deal, State Senator Anthony Williams from Pennsylvania.
I want to first thank Gene Hickok, as well as Dr. Howard Fuller, who have been, frankly, trailblazers in this movement. And I think we all, before I begin my limited comments, I really appreciate it. If we would, I don't know where Dr. Fuller is, if he'd stand, but we know where Gene Hickok is, if we can both give them a strong round of applause for their leadership in this area. I am known for comments, and I am an emotional person when it comes to this issue, primarily because of how I was raised and how I'm trying to raise my two daughters. And I do have prepared text, but bear with me, I do ramble, so hopefully you'll understand that. And I want you to open up all possibilities of how we approach this discussion today. And I'm going to start with mine. We will talk about facts, we will talk about my own experience, but I want to start with where I am, captured. And I am, like most who live in this country, still remain captured by my experience on September 11th. I left a hotel at about 8:30 in the morning. I was in Midtown Manhattan. My wife and I had attended an entertainment event the night prior, and I could actually see from my hotel room the Twin Towers. We actually contemplated going to Midtown Manhattan because I had time that day to do that, and we decided otherwise. So I got in a cab, went across town, went to Penn Station, and I could hear in the background a muffled sound, didn't pay much attention to it because after all, I'm in New York City. Got to the train station, and my wife decided to have a bagel. She went to a little shop to the right, and I could actually see on the TV screen something that looked like a smokestack in the middle of Manhattan burning, which was curious to me because I couldn't figure out where a smokestack would be in the middle of Manhattan. My wife came out and said, "Did you hear about the plane that crashed into one of the Twin Towers?" And of course, as most of us thought, it was a Cessna small plane, probably off course, unfortunately, and ended in some limited tragedy. It wasn't more than maybe 2 minutes more than we all as a nation recognized the terror that was amongst us. Of course, I probably realized a little bit faster than my wife what was occurring, and I told her, as I frantically tried to call my children and frantically tried to touch base with my office, that they were going to close down the city. We did make it on the last train going out of New York, and of course, got to Philadelphia and recovered our children. I say that because I don't think any other moment in my entire lifetime, that I realized what this nation has provided with all its imperfections. I'm a child of the 60s. I saw Martin Luther King assassinated. I saw Malcolm X assassinated. I saw John F. Kennedy assassinated. I saw Robert Kennedy assassinated. I also saw us land on the moon and other possibilities. So I did not go to war, and on occasions have questioned the direction that this country has headed in. On that day, because of what occurred, I was humbled by all the things I had taken for granted. I don't know about you, but I know exactly where I was. I know exactly what happened. I know exactly how I felt. I know exactly how sick and how tense I was, and my stomach balled up in knots about what could be happening to this place that I called home, that I took for granted. I thought that I had it all together. After all, I had risen to a position of responsibility and authority. I had some limited say in the conversation about things that were going on in my life and my community. I didn't realize that in such a quick fraction of a second, or perilous minutes, that I could not only question myself as a citizen, but as a human being in this society. I did all of that. All of it. And black, white, all that issue of racism, which has evolved from slavery, of course, went out the window. Separations of religion based upon bigotry, Jew, Gentile, even Muslims who were bombed on that day went out the window. Income did not protect anyone on that day. Generations, young and old, all felt the sting of those human bombs on that day. we as a nation bonded and identified with a common enemy, terrorist, a term that will never leave our children's vocabulary for their entire lifetime. Terrorism bonded us and continues to bond us with anger, anxiousness, vigilance, and patriotism all at the same time. Osama bin Laden, an unseen power from a far-off land, has captured us and our attention as a nation. And certainly, terrorism or terrorists, people who are nothing more than nighttime cowards sneaking up on a victim and attacking them simply because they have a different point of view, causing thousands of casualties and affecting an entire nation. Now, for some of you, the analogy I'm going to draw is a bit close, somewhat crude, and frankly may make some of you uncomfortable, but I want to make it because I'm here to deliver a message, and I don't want you to sit on your hands. I want you to feel what I feel. When I talk about education, this is how I feel. So I can only tell you the truth. Terrorism, which we all feel from September 11th, I don't quite understand why 20 years ago, when the first child failed in the first grade and didn't get a report card sent home, and a mother get called and end up in a penitentiary 20 years later, I don't quite understand why we didn't understand we were attacked then. You see, my perspective is that while we can see what is in front of us, and we can spend billions of dollars defending a country that deserves to be defended, we haven't quite figured this out when it comes to education. The reality is, I sit in a state that builds more prisons than public schools. Did anybody hear me? I sit in a state that builds more prisons than public schools. Now, I don't know anybody out there, but there's probably a few of you who are going to depend upon Social Security. How much does a tax-paying prisoner provide to the Social Security process? We live in perilous times. Now, I want you to understand, we can see the issue of terrorism. As even the terrorist sneaks around, we understand it's out there. We have our children on alert. We're protected. We all talk about it. We are doing something about it. But this issue, when it comes to education, understand something. Our flanks are open. We've allowed, for some crazy reason, my grandmother's generation to build a foundation that allowed us to land on the moon, create VCRs, DVDs, and all the like, a road to a point of where, oh, by the way, it's not their children, it's our children. See, race doesn't divide this nation on education any longer. You know, people talk about inner city schools. I'm not sure where that is, other than it's in the city. As if that's the problem. I want you to be clear. It's not. Understand what terrorism has done in this country. Fourth graders ranked 12th in math globally. Eighth graders ranked 28th in math globally. 12th graders out of 41 nations did not rank at all. Math, science, reading. That means I don't care if you think you live in the suburbs and you're okay. I want you to understand something. Jamal and Johnny are getting the same marginal misinformation every day. Now, I don't quite understand this. I don't understand how we've gotten to a point in our society where money is the barometer when it comes about education. Now, don't get uncomfortable. But these organized mobs that talk about benefits as if it's the bottom line and not performance need to move out the way. Could you imagine Colin Powell in the Gulf War saying, I'm leading the nation because I'm the most senior general on the scene? By the way, could you imagine Colin Powell leading us in the Gulf War simply because, oh, by the way, I got to take a time out, I got to check on my benefits package and my parachute? Wouldn't that instill confidence in all of us? We got to face some realities in this country. It's the tail wagging the dog, and the tail is beating the hell out of us. This has to get corrected, and has to get corrected now with no apology. We have been attacked militarily, and we have been robbed intellectually. We've been sold a bill of goods, bamboozled, if you will, to believe that this product of mediocrity is the standard bearer for the globe as the Japanese buy up all things around them, gobble up your neighborhood, and guess what? If you don't speak a foreign language, my friend, you too will be outdated pretty soon. This makes me so frustrated that I had to pull out an old document. And hopefully it will cause us to reflect. My staff thought I was insane, but it drove me to this point, because this is what I feel. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and the natures of gods entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the cause which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and all children are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, just put in school boards. It is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that government long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing inevitably the same objective, evidences a design to reduce them under absolute tyranny, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government, school board, and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such now is a necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of this king, of these overseers, is such that this Declaration of Independence, which has formed this nation, is what we are requiring ourselves to do today. We are pilgrims, my friend, in a nation surrounded by people who don't like us. But I want you to be clear. As they say in my church, and I'm a Baptist, ain't no turning me around. I want you to be clear, my friends, that the mission that you are on, this track that we have to travel, this road which we have to hobble down, this path which we are cutting, will either lead this nation to future generations of success, or will decide that we will succumb to a fourth generation, a fourth-class nation. We will allow for people who don't even grow up here to come buy our children, buy our land, buy our community, dictate how we will do our things. That is the time in which we live. We have to seize this moment, not kindly and gently, but by the throat. When we go back home, if there's someone who doesn't quite get it, I don't want you to ask them to get out the way. I want you to understand, I live in Philadelphia County, a Democratic county. I'm African American, presto changeo. I'm also a registered Democrat, but I want you to be clear. When I stand up and I talk about choice, I don't apologize to the PFT. I don't apologize. My friends are some of those teachers in that school building. My mother's a retired public school teacher. They understand that I'm telling the truth. They understand that you're telling the truth. And we're not going to stop here. I want you to be clear. It's on tape. We're not stopping here. Tax dollars should not be funding failure. Every time a trade mission shows up in this country from Japan, China, Mexico, they lick their chops. They lick their chops. They look at our school system and they think that we have totally lost our minds. They know. It's sort of like, I'm a sports fan. It's sort of like, you know, the Rams versus, remember the old Saints when they had bags over their heads? That's the way they look at us. They can't imagine that we would support a failing system so consistently and oblige our politicians to genuflect at the altar of a union. Are you crazy? Now I want you to understand something. I'm a grandson of a postal worker. I went to school based upon my grandfather's paycheck, who was a postal worker, part of a union. We understand that benefits are important. People's salaries are important. A fair, decent way of living in life is important. But I want you to understand something. It don't come first. What comes first are the children, the performance, and by the way, you should be measured by it every single day. I run for re-election every 4 years. I am based upon, it is bottom line. How'd you do? What have you done for me, not lately? It's what you did for me last 5 minutes. And if we can't expect that a system would understand that, then as the Secretary said, we don't need the system. What we need is, in this country, we need what everyone else has. When we make a contribution to a child, that money follows that child. That tax dollar represents, on my child in Philadelphia County, it's about $6,500. My daughter is $6,500 walking down the street every day. And when she shows up, it's $6,500 to the bottom line, and if she leaves, it's $6,500 which leaves. We got to be comfortable with that. Charter schools are just the beginning. And for me, we're too slow. So today, this conference is the beginning of, and I was asked to come give motivational comments. I want you to understand something. I'm not trying to motivate you. I'm trying to scare the hell out of you. I want you to be clear who you are. You are truly the colonists for this nation. I want you to be clear who you are. Dr. Martin Luther King in the 60s was considered a lot of things. He was thought to be a troublemaker by the FBI. He was thought to be a variety of not so nice things. Now in passing, he's a man of peace. He's a preacher. He is the dreamer. He's all those things. I don't want to wait a generation. I don't want to have to come to a place and contemplate the possibilities. I want to know the realities. I want the reality to be that we are a hard-nosed, aggressive nation built upon the foundation we have laid for our children, and that they have picked up the mantle, not just walk with it, not stroll with it, not jog with it, but sprint it around the globe with it. That they too will take us not to another planet, but to another universe. That they will understand science not as something they learn during the days, 5 days, and summer vacations off, but as a way of life. That math is a common language, that English, Japanese, Malaysians, Polynesians, Cubans, whoever it is, they have an ability to communicate. We can do that. We can do that if we leave this place, tell those people to move out the way, and we go back and we take charge, not of a school, not a charter school, but that we fix the system. That we are the answer. That we are the solution. That we understand who we are as Americans in this country at this time, that we have confronted the enemy, that we know who the terrorist is. Osama bin Laden, Cole will take care of that. We're going to take care of those intellectual bums who are in the way of our children and blocking that process every day. We're going to remove those from this process. Every time I come to one of these events, I get obviously a little charged up. But I also am very compelled and moved by the stories I hear. You are not alone. I definitely suggest that you make and bond with your neighbor, that you make friendships, because clearly there is nothing laid out for us. There's not a menu for us to pick from. It's the guy to the right, the woman to the left, somebody providing information that we didn't have. That's why we're gathered. Your work is that much more important for us in this period of time. And we're that much more blessed as a nation for the work you're doing. God bless you.
Hopefully, that is giving you a sense of what the next several days will be like, the fervor and the passion that we hope to deliver to you. A few housekeeping things. First of all, your state meetings start at 3 o'clock today. We encourage all of you to be attending your state meetings. The program that you have before you lists the room numbers as to where your state meetings are taking place. Second, we have a reception tonight from 6 to 7 o'clock upstairs, Exhibit Hall C. We invite all of you to come join us, the senior staff of the U.S. Department of Education. Get to know us. Let us get to know who you are. Last but not least, once again, we'd like to thank our very honorable guests up here, Mayor John Norquist, Parent Advocate Leah Volknier, Undersecretary Gene Hickok, and Senator Tony Williams. Let's give them one last applause. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you through the next several days. Enjoy yourselves.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the National Charter Schools Conference 2002, Mr. Dean Kern, Director of the U.S. Department of Education Charter Schools Program.
Welcome. Hope you're having a good morning. Is everybody having a good morning out there? Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. There's a lot of people in the very back. In the very back. Are you guys having a good time out there? Oh, man, you're worse than a Bronco game in a losing season. Oh, wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to welcome you again to the National Charter Schools Conference. We are honored this morning to have a number of special guests. First off, though, we would like you to rise for presentation of the colors. Please rise. The color guard, organized by Mr. Wesley Chisholm, is from Walker International Middle School. It's the 623rd Composites and Squadron 9. They are part of the Civil Air Patrol, United States Air Force Auxiliary.
Right shoulder up. Left boost. Forward march. Halt. Right boost. Reset. Off.
Our next guest is a very special lady, Miss Sarah Larson from Fitchie Middle School, who will lead us in the national anthem.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Outstanding. Please remain standing as we have a group of students from a variety of charter schools across the greater Milwaukee area lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Let's give all these kids a great hand. Aren't they great? Thank you. You may be seated. My name is Dean Kern, and I'm the new director of the Public Charter Schools program, and I'm excited to be here. For those of you who have not met me or know much about me, I've been in this position all of 12 days. I've been in Washington, D.C. all of 14. So if you think I know anything about anybody or anyone, forget it. Give me another 6 months, and I will be able to answer all your questions. We have a few changes in the program today that I'd like to bring to your attention. First of all, there's a Title I workshop that's being led by Christine Wolf. Title I workshop being led by Christine Wolf. That will be a Q&A presentation workshop only. If you have questions about Title I, how it impacts your charter schools, impacts your faculty, impacts your program, please attend this particular workshop. It will be Q&A. The second thing, on your table, hopefully, you will find a 3x5 card. Now, this is the true lottery process. We randomly selected those tables that we're going to throw cards out on to see who at those tables would grab the single 3x5 card. So, if you have a 3x5 card, feel privileged that you have been chosen in the lottery. What you need to do on those 3x5 cards is to write down a question that you would like to have posed to Secretary Rod Page today, this morning, during his presentation. A question that you would specifically like him to be answering. We have gathered questions from last night's group as well already in advance, and so we have a large selection, but we are still encouraging that if you have a burning question, please put it down in the 3x5 card. We'll have various people circulating through the audience to gather them. Please just, if one person at your table would raise your hand and keep them in the air for a while, we'll try to get around to your table and collect them. It is now my honor to introduce our next guest, the gentleman who is definitely my boss, and a man who has stepped forward on the choice platform, has promoted choice, parent choice, and especially charter schools. May I introduce to you Undersecretary Gene Hickok.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have to say, after listening to that fantastic rendition of the national anthem and listening to our students lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, given this beautiful day in this beautiful place, I can think of no better way to start the day than that. I'd like to ask you to join me in another round of applause. It is my privilege to begin today's program by introducing the governor of the great state of Wisconsin. I am tremendously lucky as Undersecretary to get the chance to meet a lot of very fantastic people. Many of you I met yesterday. Some of the most impressive people I get a chance to meet are those who daily attempt to move their states, their localities, and this nation forward, not just in education, but in economic development, job creation, etc. Governor McCallum became the 43rd governor of Wisconsin after 14 years as this state's lieutenant governor. Throughout his public career, he has made education one of his major concerns, and particularly charter schools. And for those of you who are joining us today for the first time in Milwaukee and Wisconsin, the fact is that this place and this state is among the nation's leaders in school reform, educational choice, and charter schools, in no small part because of the efforts of the governor. He's a native of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, a graduate of Macalester College. And I think what most impresses me in the short time I've had a chance to know him is the fact that he's made the argument that needs to be made, I think, not just here, but all across the nation, and that is government needs to do more with less and find ways to empower the citizens to accomplish the great dreams and visions that they have. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the governor of Wisconsin, Governor McCallum.
Thank you, Secretary Hickok, for the kind introduction. And let me say what a privilege it is to welcome you and Secretary Page to the National Charter School Conference. Let me share with the audience how privileged we are to have this conference right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which has been one of the leaders of the charter school movement a decade ago. We were thrilled to help mark 10 years of education innovation. All of us agree the future is in the hearts and minds of our children. That's why we have made education a priority. Education is the most important component of building a successful and comfortable life, and the state has a responsibility to ensure that all of our children reach their greatest potential. Now, despite tough economic times, there are 45 states in this country that are having tough times with their budgets. In Wisconsin, we have maintained our commitment to public education, to giving parents options for children's education. That's why we've also stayed committed to the school choice program and the charter school program, and we will continue to fight for them in the future. In 1993, Wisconsin was the first of 10 states, among 10 states, to enact charter school legislation. We knew we were onto something when we first considered charter schools, and we worked hard to convince others of their importance. A decade later, we are able to celebrate the ongoing success of our charter schools. There are more than 100 charter schools in Wisconsin, serving more than 12,000 students. In addition, there are 25 more groups that are planning new charter schools throughout our state. Charter schools in Wisconsin are healthy and they are thriving. Through our charter schools, we are providing thousands of parents with greater choices for the education of their children. We are boosting student achievement and helping to improve all of our public schools. Wisconsin's charter schools have been outlets of innovation. I'm proud of the way charter schools have grown and the way they are preparing our children for the future. It is now my privilege to welcome U.S. Education Secretary Rod Page. Now, charter schools have a real champion in Secretary Page. He was a strong supporter of charter schools while serving as superintendent of the Houston Independent School District. Secretary Page and President Bush believe charter schools are a vital part of our public school system. Charter schools are a key component to President Bush and No Child Left Behind Act, which Secretary Page implements in partnership with Wisconsin and your states. Secretary Page and President Bush have proposed spending $200 million in next year's budget to support 1,800 new and existing charter schools. And they proposed another $100 million to help charter schools improve their facilities. That is a tremendous commitment that will help states such as Wisconsin keep our charter schools healthy and keep them growing. It is my pleasure to introduce Secretary Rod Page. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor, for that kind introduction. But thank you most of all for what you're doing for children in Wisconsin. You're a great friend of education. You're a great friend of our great president. And we're grateful for your leadership. Let's give the governor another big round of applause, please. Instead, another of my heroes is present to us. Howard Fuller around. Where's Howard? Let's give Howard a big round of applause. He's a great friend of us. I want to thank all of you for coming and being a part of this conference. You're all great soldiers in this battle to build in this nation an education system that leaves no child behind. Thank you for your efforts. We have a great challenge, but we're up to it. We feel good about it because it's the right thing to do. Thank you for your participation. Let's thank this great city for their hospitality, too. Thank you, Milwaukee, for allowing us to be here today. Thank you. You know, I travel the country a good deal, and I see many inspiring examples of good schools, great teachers, students that are excited. They are rising to the challenge of ensuring that no child is left behind. I see moms and pops and businessmen all across the country working to create a great education system in America. But it's not enough. It's not enough. we yet have a lot to do. Every day I'm reminded what an honor it is to be a citizen of the United States of America. Every day I'm reminded what a special honor it is for me to serve this nation as Secretary of Education. It's a great responsibility and a great job, and I love it. One of the things I love most about it is I get a lot of letters from kids. They tend to write me. Let me share with you some of the most popular themes of their letters. They make requests and ask for favors. They want shorter school days, less homework. They want better cafeteria food. Well, one child wrote me and asked me to come and visit that school and said, by the way, bring the president with you. But most of that letters include well thought out questions, like the one from a New Jersey 8th grader named Brianna, who wrote and asked, and I quote, "What do you believe to be the most important issues facing elementary or high school education in the United States today?" Wow, Brianna, you kind of put your finger right on it. That's a great question. What do we believe to be the most important issues facing elementary and high school education in the United States today? That goes right to the heart of our new education reform. The bill called No Child Left Behind. That goes right to its heart. What do we really believe are the great issues? Well, I need to try to answer that question for Brianna, and I'll attempt it now. I believe accountability is a key issue. I believe we have to accept the responsibility of our mission. I believe that we cannot continue to make excuses about the at-risk factors that children bring to us, that we must see that they too have an opportunity. We must take it upon ourselves to be responsible and to be accountable. Schools cannot make excuses about the barriers that young people bring to them. It is our responsibility. I was reading a magazine, and I picked up this little poem that talks about responsibility. I'll share it with you now. The college professor said, "Such wrong in a student, it's a shame. Lack of preparation is to blame." The high school teacher said, "Good heaven, that boy's a fool. The fault surely is with the middle school." The middle school teacher said, "Such stupidity may I be spared. Those elementary people sent them to me so unprepared." The elementary teacher said, "The kindergartners, they're blockheads all. They call that preparation, why that's worse than nothing at all." The kindergarten teacher said, "Lack of training, never did I see. What kind of woman must that child's mother be?" The mother said, "Poor helpless child, he's not to blame. His father's people, they all the same." And the father said at the end of the line, "I'm not sure the rascal's mine." Throughout the whole system, everybody is blaming somebody else and nobody's taking responsibility. Brianna, I think accountability and responsibility is a great issue. And it's an issue that we must solve. And it underpins, is one of the underpinning pillars of the No Child Left Behind Act. It calls on us to be responsible, calls on us to be accountable. Schools must be accountable. Lack of flexibility and local control, Brianna, is another one of the issues. We cannot, from Washington, micromanage what goes on in schools. When schools change, they will do so by the people who are in the schools. Schools will change as a result of the efforts of those who walk the halls of the schools and who look into the eyes of the children. We can provide research and we can provide resources and we can provide regulations, but the actual change is going to take place in the school. So we have to trust the people in the school, trust the people in local communities to do this. Flexibility and local control, to get rid of the bureaucracy, get rid of the red tape, and allow people at the local scene to do the job. That is another one of the issues, Brianna. Brianna, I think also that our teaching has to be based on sound pedagogy. I think that we have to rely on science. I think we have to use those teaching methods that have proven to be successful. I think trial and error is for research. For teaching, we've got to use sound practice. So now the reading war should be ended. We should now look to what the research is telling us. We've had 25 years of this argument. It's time now to teach the children. And we know now how to teach the children. NICHD has given us sound research. The National Institute for Health adopted reading as a health problem and did the research to find the answer. And so, Brianna, I think our teaching has to be based on sound pedagogy. That's another great issue. It is also the third pillar of the No Child Left Behind Act now. Lack of parental options. Lack of parental options, Brianna, is a fourth pillar and a fourth issue. I believe that public schools are our nation's most important institutions, but they must open themselves up to the competition. They've got to meet the challenge. They cannot any longer hide behind a monopoly. We have to provide options for parents. Those of you who follow the discussions in this bill know that choice gave us quite a few hiccups. But unabashedly, we say that choice is a necessary condition for effective school reform. It has to be a part of any mix. And it is not there so that it can unravel public schools. It is there so it can make them stronger. It is a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. To be their best, they must have choice. I believe the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001 will go down in history as one of the key pieces of legislation, key piece of public policy, in fact, that finally closed the achievement gap between those who have and those who don't, between those who are hopeful and those who are hopeless. And it all started because we have a president who believes that our most sacred duty in this nation and in this government is to educate our children. It is our most sacred duty to educate our children. They are our future. Yet, national report cards are screaming at us now and saying that we're destroying that future one child at a time. Although we educate in this nation some of our children very well, we're not educating all of them. 2 out of 3 fourth graders can't read proficiently. 7 out of 10 inner city and rural fourth graders can't read at the most basic level. Nearly a third of our college freshmen arrive on their university campuses unprepared for rigorous university work and have to take remediation. And our nation's 12th graders rank among the lowest in math and science achievement when compared with our European and Asian neighbors. Yes, we're educating some of the children very well, but that's not our goal. We want to educate all of them. All means all. No child is to be left behind. These are more than just statistics. They paint a grim picture of human toll of an education system that's failing too many children, especially children of African American descent, especially Hispanic students, especially low-income children in our nation's classrooms. Soon after President Bush took office, he called on Congress to fundamentally change this and to enact legislation that would change this, to create in this nation a school system that would leave no child behind. Never before has a nation committed itself to all of its children. But this is a burning question. Should we commit ourselves to some of our children? Or should we commit ourselves to all of our children? Of course, this is a difficult task. Of course, this is going to be hard to do. But this is the United States of America, and we can do this. Not just some of the children, not just those children after we move aside the LEP kids, not just those children after we move aside the special ed kids, or after we move aside the poor kids, or even the kids who don't have supportive parents, we'll educate then the others. No, all means all. We'll educate them all. All means all. Now, how we do that is important. The No Child Left Behind law recognizes that just spending money won't solve the problem. Of course, we need resources, and the president is supplying resources. But that's not the only part of the difficulty here. We tried that. Since 1996, spending from the United States Department of Education discretionary funds has doubled from $23 billion to the present $49.8 billion. Yet, our achievement is flat. What do we get to show for that? Every year we do the same thing, spend more. Every year we get the same results. Mediocre student performance or worse. Albert Einstein told us that the definition of insanity is the belief that one can get different results to continue to do the same thing. It doesn't take an Einstein to see that the truth is money is not the only part of the solution that we need to work on. To solve the problem, we need a framework for change. And our new education reform law provides that framework by insisting on accountability, by insisting on local control and flexibility, by insisting on pedagogy based on science, and insisting that we provide more choice for parents. The No Child Left Behind framework is one for change. And it's providing also historic levels of funding to get the job done, including the largest education budget for disadvantaged children in the history of our country. But this time, it's not just spending. This time, it's investing. The big difference is now taxpayers will know what they're getting for their money. Parents will know if their children are learning. We citizens will know if schools are working and if children are not learning. And if a school has been provided resources and success has been enabled. And if it still is failing its mission, then parents can choose to get one-on-one tutoring or after-school help, or to move that child to a higher performing public school or a charter school. Wisconsin understands this. It's a leader in this. This state has led the way to giving parents options. Now, thanks to the No Child Left Behind Act, parents all over our nation will have that option. This is not an education retread. This is an education revolution. We have to be serious about the change. The focus is now on the child. What the child needs. How well is the child learning? And if the child is not learning, what we will do to provide that learning. What kind of help does the child need? The bill is not called No School Left Behind. It is called No Child Left Behind. Defenders of the status quo say charters won't work. They say it's too radical. The parents won't go for it, and their children won't learn. I say, take another look. Take another look. You'll see that more than 500,000 children attend charter schools in America now. More than 2,400 charter schools nationwide are operating. Nearly 2/3 of these charter schools have waiting lists almost as big as their capacity. What other evidence do you need? These waiting lists are proof that parents know what they want and are willing to wait for it. According to a 1999 study by the U.S. Department of Education under then Secretary Riley, charter schools not only help their students, but they're also strengthening the public schools from which those children come. President Bush was a strong and early supporter of charter schools as governor of Texas, and he's continued that support with $200 million in funding for charters under the No Child Left Behind Act. Recently, the U.S. Department of Education awarded $25 million in grants to help charters nationally, to help them buy and build and renovate buildings because we know of this special need. And I call upon the Congress now to fund the President's most recent budget request of $300 million for charter schools, including $100 million for the Charter School Credit Enhancement Program. Some people are surprised to learn that a former superintendent of one of the nation's largest school systems supports charters and choice so strongly. Not only do I support them, but I help charter them in Texas. And I believe our president, I believe as he does, that if you give people the freedom and flexibility to succeed and hold them accountable for the results, they'll step up and meet the challenge. This is not to say that we believe that every charter school works well. That's why they're chartered. We have high expectations. That's why they know to stay open, students must achieve. To stay open, students must progress. No improvement, no charter, no excuse. We wish all the other schools would operate that way. That's how it should be. We applaud success, but we insist on results. We don't want to hear our kids are poor, the kids come with these problems. We don't want to hear the kids are difficult. Like I heard today from one teacher who I'm very disappointed in. By the way, I think teachers are our nation's heroes. But this one said, parents and children are the problem. Hello, parents and children are not the problem. It is the thing that we must solve. Every one of our children deserve to get a good education. And if we are educators, and if we accept that title and responsibility to be educators, if that's what we call ourselves, then we expect educators to deliver. We expect to be held accountable, and we expect to deliver. A lot of good has come from charters, and a lot of good has come from choice. And a lot of children who other schools gave up on have a brighter future now because of charters and because of choice. And I hope that lawmakers in this great state and elsewhere will continue to support these successful programs. The reform of the No Child Left Behind Act, when implemented, will provide a safety net for these children so that we can make sure that no child is left behind. This is a moment of profound change, but we as a nation are up to this challenge. And we hope that someday soon, everybody will point back to this time, and they will say that is when they raised the bar for all children. And they will say that is when leadership triumphed over politics, and no child was left behind. And that is when Americans realized that we can, in this great nation, create a school system that leaves no child behind. We have that capacity. We also have that responsibility. God bless each one of you, and God bless America. Thank you.
As was mentioned earlier, there will now be questions that address that you have submitted. You've each had the cards, and if we could ask you to restrict it to one question per person. I figure out if each person asks one question, it takes 1 minute to respond. It'll just be a little over 5 hours of this. These are uncensored questions. First one is a comment. Secretary, you're doing a great job. America loves you. Signed, Mrs. Page. First one is, everywhere you go, people complain that charter schools drain money from public schools. But charter schools are public schools. How can we make people understand that charter schools don't steal money from public schools?
You've already met my colleague, Jean Hickok. Thank you, Jean, for being here. And Jean is going to assist with these responses. I hear that argument a lot, too, and I think it's not a good, sound argument. First of all, public education is a concept. It's not a construct. It's not a structure. It's not a way of doing it. You know, what it means is that a child is due a free and appropriate education at the expense of the citizens of that great state. And the delivery system designed to provide that education is not built in concrete. So the money is there to pay for the education of the child, and whether the structure, the delivery system that comes through is through what we now call the public school structure or through some other system, I think that's appropriate. In the final analysis, I believe that the education in all of our states will be through a multiple system. There will be charter schools, cyber schools, religious schools, all kinds of schools, what we call the public schools. But the heavy lift is still going to be the public schools, and they got to get that fixed, and they got to step up to the competition. Charter schools, whether they're public or private, doesn't matter with me. The point is, the funds are there not for the school. The funds are there for the education of the child. And if the delivery system is what we call now charter schools, that's how it should be. Thanks.
Next question. You can stay right up here because all the questions are addressed to you, Mr. Secretary. The next question is, the new law, No Child Left Behind, has something in it on public school choice. Are charter schools affected by this?
Something in for public school. I'm not sure I understand that question.
Well, we'll go on to the next. I can't explain them. This is what they're submitted, so it's.
Yes.
I believe.
Yes, yes. I think I got it now.
Okay.
Gene reminded me. Yes, it does. What it says, the new law says, that first thing we do is enable success, provide resources, provide technical assistance, but then expect results. And if we don't get the results, then a mother or father is free to take that child to a different school. That different school first must be public school or a public charter school. If it fails a third year, then the child is able to go out to get supplemental services from the private sector. They can go to Kaplan or Sylving, or they can go to some entrepreneurial activity put on by teachers, but they can go out into the private sector and then get help. The point is, we will not tie children to failing schools. School must perform. If it does not perform, then parents have options.
Some people favor charter schools over vouchers, or vouchers over charter schools, or even tax credits. Do you have a preference on these?
No, I don't have a preference. Whatever delivery system works best, and either would be fine. I think all should be a part of the mix. See?
I think really one of the answers to that question is that we should stop thinking about either or and drawing these false dichotomies. A truly successful education system, as you said a few moments ago, should be a broad menu of choices and options. Public education is about educating the public the way they see fit, as opposed to a single system the way it sees fit.
Good. This is a tough one. How do you think the Supreme Court should rule on the Cleveland voucher case?
I think and hope that the Supreme Court supports the Cleveland program.
The new law says that all teachers have to be highly qualified. What does this mean for charter schools?
Well, first of all, the new law uses the term highly qualified and makes a distinction between qualification and certification. That's important. I think we all know that there are in this nation certified teachers who probably could do a whole lot better job than they do. And we know of lots of qualified individuals who are not certified because years ago they did not choose to become teachers but might want to become teachers now. So it lays open the opportunity for alternative certification, Troops for Teachers, Teach for America, etc. Under the law, there are 3 conditions for qualified teachers, mostly defined at the state level. You have to have an undergraduate degree, a BA or BS at least. You have to have state licensure as defined by the state, and that would include alternative approaches to licensure. And the state has to demonstrate your competence, typically through some kind of state exam. As far as charter schools are concerned, whatever the state law is with regard to the qualifications of charter school teachers stands. It does not override state law. So in a state where I come from, Pennsylvania, for example, if the law says that 75% of your charter school teachers have to be certified, then that would stand.
Can a charter school be a supplemental services provider?
Yes.
Next question is, can you care to elaborate? No, no, it doesn't really. Doesn't really. Just kidding. Next question is,
No.
What money is available for professional development for charter school teachers?
There's no pot of money set aside for professional development for charter school teachers, but Title II of this new law represents the largest single increase in teacher preparation, professional development ever in the history of federal education policy. And charter school teachers certainly can access, and charter schools can certainly access that money. The goal here is to engage the education community, and I would include higher education as well, in a national discussion about preparing teachers better for charter schools, for all the challenges of education, and better professional development that gets at the content needs of teachers. That's a very serious challenge. We need to do a better job, not just in charter schools, but everywhere, of making sure that our new teachers and our current teachers have the knowledge of the discipline that they're teaching, because the data tells us they don't.
I want to start a charter school for boys. It would be a middle school and focus on academics and leadership. What advice can you give me?
Go for it.
Next is, how will the federal government help to control the resolutions being passed by local boards of education that limit the number of charter schools?
We're saddened by that, although the federal government has no way of controlling, or would it wish to control local school districts. Remember the third pillar of the president's 4 pillars that underpin change in the nation, that underpins his strategy, is flexibility and local control. That means we depend on the local people to make these kinds of decisions. If local school boards are out of sync with the will of the community has to build the civic capacity necessary to make those kinds of decisions, to change the school board and to elect people who represent their thoughts. That's the way our system works in America. And I know that that can work because I've seen it work.
If you want to clap, clap. It says, money is tight for all charter schools, so it is not unexpected that schools are not willing to take classroom money for fiscal overhead. Is there any funding expressly designated for this purpose?
The president has included better than $100 million in this budget request for '03 for that purpose. We recognize facilities and upkeep and those kinds of things represent a particular strain on charter school entrepreneurs, and he wants to help with that. And so we hope that the Congress will cooperate by passing the resolution that provides the funds for us for that.
What recommendations of the President's Commission on Special Education will be supported by the administration? And also, what's the status of full funding of IDEA?
The President's Commission on Special Education will submit its report to the President July 1. Although we have some idea about the content of that report, we don't have the specifics of it yet until the report is officially transmitted to the President, at which time we will study the report and then decide on what parts of it that we'll support. I'm not sure what it's going to be like right now.
Test scores are important, but not the only measure of academic success in students. What does No Child Left Behind, why does No Child Left Behind put such an emphasis on test scores? What about demonstration of mastery, etc.?
Well, if you notice, I'm not sure that the No Child Left Behind Act puts such emphasis on testing. And that's what you've heard a lot because that's the most newsworthy thing, and the press has expressed a lot of interest in that. But testing to us is simply one part of a comprehensive reform package which includes setting high standards, setting challenging standards, and then setting content standards, setting performance standards, and then determining assessment systems that will measure against those standards, that align with those standards. And the reason you have to have tests there is you have to determine the extent to which the standards are being achieved or not achieved. A teacher in Memphis probably explained it best when she said, I have to test because I have to know what the student does not know so I can teach the student that. Absence of assessments and appropriate assessments, you are teaching in the dark. The purpose of the assessment for us is to determine the extent to which the standard is being achieved or not being achieved. In addition to that part of the system, we hope that the teacher staff development can be aligned with the standards, that the textbook selection can be aligned with the standards, that the teaching materials can be aligned with the standards. So you see, testing is only one part of that, although it's gotten a lot of discussion. It's simply one part. And to us, teaching and testing is the same thing. You cannot know what the student does not know unless you have some valid way of assessing that, and we think tests would do that.
We have time for one more question. This one reads, Secretary Page, how will the federal government assist charter schools in achieving the same technology levels as public schools?
I'm going to let Gene help with that, but I'm going to add to the last question, and that was testing the only thing? And the answer is no. A big part of the No Child Left Behind also includes the emphasis on character and character development. Yesterday, Mrs. Bush had a White House conference dedicated to character development and character education programs. It's as important to us to teach a child what counts as it is to teach them how to count. So this is a very important part of our program. Gene?
The Secretary established an Office of Educational Technology under his direct authority relatively recently. And under that office, all the technology initiatives are directed and focused. The goal here is to make sure that technology becomes just a part of the way all schools operate. Charter public schools are full partners in this process. And as these new programs are developed, you need to make sure that we know if you are having trouble at the state or local level accessing these opportunities. Going back to an earlier question, we recognize there's a degree of tension between charter schools and school districts and charter schools and state and local policy. Our goal is to help you cut through that tension. And so you need to let us know if you're having access troubles with those new dollars. They're very important to you.
Thank you for submitting the questions, and thank you for responding.
I want to thank the Governor and Secretary Page, and this session is now over. The next session begins in just a few moments. Thank you very much.